I call to order this regular meeting of the Board of Public Works this Tuesday, May 21st of 2024. First up, we have messages from board members. Do we have any messages from the board this evening?
Do not.
Seeing none. Next up is petitions and remonstrances. If we have anyone who is here to make public comment on something that is not on the agenda this evening, now is the opportunity to do that. If you're on Zoom, you can use the chat function or the raised hand function to let us know that you're interested in making a comment.
I have nothing on Zoom.
Okay. Seeing none. Next up is the consent agenda. Under the consent agenda is Resolution 2024-027, Renew Mobile Vendor Doner Kebab. Resolution 2024-028, 4th and Rogers Block Party. Resolution 2024-029, Blue Ridge Neighborhood Food Truck Nights and Neighborhood Picnic. Addendum number 3 to preliminary engineering contract with WSP USA for neighborhood greenway projects. Sidewalk closure request from Clark Concrete in the 100 block of North Grant. This is May 22nd, 2024 through May 26th of 2024. Request from CenterPoint Energy for temporary easement at 2120 South Highland Avenue. Request from CenterPoint Energy for temporary easement at 810 North Woodlawn Avenue. Renewal number 1 with Cargill Salt, and approval of payroll. Do we have any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda this evening? Do we have any public comment on anything in the consent agenda this evening?
I have no comment on Zoom.
All right, seeing none. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
I move that we approve tonight's consent agenda for May 21, 2024.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Roach?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next up is new business. First under new business is Resolution 2024-030, public need to purchase right-of-way for the High Street intersection modernizations and multi-use path project.
Good evening. My name is Neil Copper. I'm with the engineering department. The next 3 items are related to this project, so I'm going to go into a bit of detail and background on the project and then shorter versions on each of the subsequent items. So this project is included in the city's adopted transportation plan. It's included not just generally in the way that all of our streets have a recommendation, but it is actually specifically listed as a recommended project. So there was an application put forward to the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and it was prioritized for federal funding through the MPO. We're getting nearly $4 million in federal funding that can be used at up to 80% of project costs. For the local match on the project, the local match was prioritized by the City Council as part of its 2022 general obligation bond issuance. It was listed as the top priority project within that series of bonds. The project, the primary goals include improving safety, accessibility, and mobility on the corridor. Work includes constructing a multi-use path on the east side of the street, east side of High Street between Arden and Hunter. It replaces 2 existing traffic signals and includes other improvements such as stormwater infrastructure and accessible pedestrian curb ramps. We discussed briefly in the work session that the southern terminus of the project does match up with a previous phase of this project, an existing path, and the northern terminus, instead of going all the way to 3rd Street, it stops 2 blocks short, and that is because there are multiple ongoing planning efforts for that area. We've held 2 public meetings for the project and had numerous individual meetings with property owners, and there are more to come. Detailed design is underway right now on the project, but the concept is finalized to a point that we are ready to proceed into right-of-way acquisition. Basically, we need to do that in order to stay on schedule and be able to actually use that federal funding. We currently estimate up to 38 parcels requiring some amount of right-of-way acquisition, though it's possible that amount may reduce slightly. The right-of-way process follows the Federal Uniform Relocation Act, which we do on all of our right-of-way acquisitions, and involves multiple appraisals for each parcel and discussions directly with the property owners. After we finish with right-of-way acquisition and all the detailed design, we'll go into bidding, and then we are looking at construction in 2026. The first item here is a resolution where the board would confirm that the project serves a public purpose, and it will authorize the right-of-way acquisition process to move forward. The second and third items after this are contract amendments that include the services necessary to actually complete the acquisition. But staff has reviewed this resolution, and we recommend its approval, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions on this item?
One quick question, Neil, and this is more out of general curiosity than anything else. How is the project going to address the historic cemetery at High and Moores?
Yeah, so great question, because we've heard it a lot. It's a tight area, but we are actually able to, so if you picture the existing road, the east curb line of that road, we're going to shift it west just a few feet. So we'll maintain all the travel lanes at the intersection, but take just a little bit of space by narrowing those lanes. And so that little space combined with the existing sidewalk and a little bit of space behind the existing sidewalk, we're able to squeeze the path in there until we get north of the cemetery. Our plan is to not touch the historic cemetery wall at all. There is a short concrete wall kind of in front of the actual cemetery wall that we'll be tearing out, but the plan is to avoid the cemetery wall.
Thank you.
I have a somewhat related question. First, just a thank you for putting these 3 items together like we discussed at the work session yesterday. That was really helpful in the overview for all of them. I have a similar question, but about the intersection at High and Second, which is right near 2 elementary schools, and what kind of coordination will be involved with MCCSC as it will affect bus routes and things like that.
So maintenance of traffic in general is a big piece that we have yet to figure all the details out on. So MCCSC received our kind of general notifications, about project meetings and things, but we have not gone into the detailed, here's when this portion of street might be impacted. We're broadly thinking that High Street will likely have to close one lane of High Street kind of in segments as they do their construction. So High Street would essentially become a one-way street. So depending on where buses are coming from and which direction, that will obviously impact some of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's coordination that we need to do and have not done yet.
Sure. But you said they are aware at this point of even the beginning stages of the project, so they know to look ahead even to 2026 that this is a possibility?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for MCCSC as a whole. We have sent emails to them. I have not heard anything specifically from them.
Okay, thank you.
And then question about the right-of-way that's being acquired. I imagine in the nature of this project that right-of-way is primarily what you would typically imagine for a multi-use path. It's near the roadway. It's the edge of the property. Are there any properties where it's unusual, like an unusually large amount of right-of-way, or is it mostly that pathway?
So we acquire as little as we can get away with, basically. We have both permanent right-of-way and temporary right-of-way. So in the permanent right-of-way, the only thing we would be acquiring is basically that path width. So there's a what we call the tree plot, a little buffer separation. There's the width of the path. 1 foot off the back of that is typically where we set the permanent right-of-way line. There's always going to be some little variations for things. And then beyond that, there's additional temporary right-of-way acquisition, either for grading to tie back into somebody's lawn or reconstruct a driveway or, things. That temporary right-of-way then reverts back to the owner, of course. I do not believe so there's one exception that I can think of. We will be acquiring right-of-way in order to, or either right-of-way or easement in order to put stormwater connections kind of east through in between 2 parcels to connect to a creek as an outlet. So that is a little bit different, but otherwise, no, it's just the area next to the street that you would think of being part of the transportation. I should also note that, depending on which parcel you're at, some parcels have the homes set far back from the street. Some parcels, the homes are much closer. So there are some owners who are feeling like it's a very large portion of their property, or at least of their front yard.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Any other questions on this item?
I'll just make one more comment that the connectivity theoretically from Hunter all the way to Roar Road along High Street and through Alcott Park is phenomenal. Thank you very much.
Any public comment on this item? Again, if you're on Zoom and would like to make public comment, you can use the raised hand function or the chat function. Okay, seeing none. Is there a motion on this item?
I move that we approve Resolution 2024-030, public need to purchase right-of-way for the High Street intersection modernization and multi-use path project.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Corone?
Aye.
Roach?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next, we have amendment number 1 to existing LPA consulting contract with Butler, Fairman, and Seifert, Inc. for preliminary engineering services for the High Street intersection modernizations and multi-use path project.
Neil Copper again, same project. So this second item is an amendment to an existing preliminary engineering contract. The amendment removes some design and right-of-way services that are no longer necessary, and it primarily adds services for right-of-way appraising and management. The not-to-exceed amount increases by $236,640 to a new total of $1,099,390. Staff has reviewed this amendment and supports it, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions on this item? Any public comments on this item? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve amendment number 1 to the existing LPA consulting contract with Butler, Fairman, and Seifert, Inc. for preliminary engineering services for the High Street intersection modernization and multi-use path project.
Second?
All right, I will call the roll. Corone?
Aye.
Roach?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next up is a new LPA consulting contract with Butler, Fairman, and Seifert, Inc. for right-of-way acquisition services for the High Street intersection modernizations and multi-use path project.
Neil Copper again, same project, similar long title. So this is the new contract. It's with the same consulting firm. It includes additional services basically for right-of-way buying. This is a separate contract because our other contract includes services that are reimbursable through the federal funding that we have, but this buying service cannot be reimbursed using the same funding source. So we're keeping it a separate contract to ensure that it's just clearly different. The contract is set at a not-to-exceed amount of $122,100. Again, staff has reviewed this contract and supports it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions on this item? Any public comments on this item?
I have no comment on Zoom.
Okay, seeing none. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the new LPA consulting contract with Butler, Fairman, and Seifert, Inc. for right-of-way acquisition services for the High Street intersection modernizations and multi-use path project.
Second?
All right, I will call the roll. Corone?
Aye.
Roach?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Thanks. Next up is change order number 2 for Adams Street Sidewalk Project.
Jason Kerr with engineering. This is change order again, change order number 2 for Adams Street sidewalk. This project was adding sidewalk along Adams Street along the west side. There was a retaining wall that was being installed along the project. There had to be suitable soil for under the wall for stabilization. So there was an undercut dug to take out loose soil. Stone was compacted back. We put the footer and the wall up. There was an old one there that we did remove that disturbed some of the soil, but we had to do this. So with this change order to get that stabilization done of the soil is $11,762.30, which brings the grand total of the project to $383,638.26. And we approve, our staff agrees with this to approve this.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Questions on this item? Any public comment on this item?
I have no comment on Zoom.
Okay, seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve change order number 2 for the Adams Street Sidewalk Project.
Second?
All right, I will call the roll. Crone?
Aye.
Roach?
Aye.
Cox Deckard, aye. Motion passes.
Thanks.
Thanks. Next is request for sidewalk and road closure extensions from AEG.
Hi, it's Alex Gray from engineering. So this is part of the citywide fiber project that AEG has been doing. And as part of their schedule changes that they've had, because it's been roughly, I think, almost a year and a half now, they have had to move around some of those permits, and some of those areas have lapsed into expiration, and they want to adjust them into being current now so they can finish them up, which this includes like restoration work. So if they've got some areas that need more dirt and more grass and seed and that sort of thing, or if they need to finish up, like maybe they didn't get to a street yet that they hadn't put fiber in, but they got to a neighborhood. So in this, they have, that's why there is 11. 2 of those were from actually the previous board, but they have adjusted the dates just a little bit, so I wanted to include them just for completeness. And all of these are planned to be final completion by August 15th before all of IU students come back.
Thank you. Questions on this item? Any public comments on this item?
I have no comment on Zoom.
All right, seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the request for sidewalk and road closure extensions from AEG.
Oh, second?
All right, I will call the roll. Crone?
Aye.
Roach?
Aye.
Cox Deckard, aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next is staff reports and other business.
I have no staff reports.
Thanks. Next is approval of claims. Are there any questions on the claims? Okay. Any public comment on claims? All right, seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve claims tonight in the amount of $6,050,264.17.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Crone?
Aye.
Roach?
Aye.
Cox Deckard, aye. Motion passes. And if there's nothing else, I will call for adjournment.